Okay. Hi. Hello, Caro. Welcome to the Big O podcast. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And thanks so much for having me. I'm very
Uh,
excited.
my pleasure. As you know, I love our conversations together. Now, Caro Gomez is the Joy Witch. So, Caro, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. So, my name is Caro Gomez. I am a Joy Witch fashion and textile designer, and I work with women inside and out to allow them to embody their inner, most powerful self. And I do this through fashion, textiles, shamanic drumming, dancing, and lots of wonderful magic.
And magic is exactly the right word. Actually, I've experienced Caro's everything, designs, ceremonies, rituals, everything. And it's just amazing and has led to some amazing breakthroughs of my own, which you very well know, Caro. Now, what I want to start with actually is Caro's designs, because they're very much to do with what the Big O podcast is all about. And I've got my lovely socks on at the moment.
Oh, yay!
Original Caro Gomez design there. So Caro, tell us about your designs.
Yes, absolutely. For those of you that can't see, I just went like yay with my hands when I heard that she was wearing the vulva socks. So I started my design career about 3, 4 years ago, after a very long period of I'm not a designer, I'm not creative, that is reserved for some of the selected few around the world, but it's not for me. And I very much lived by that for, I would say, most of my life, even knowing like deep in my heart and my soul that all I wanted to do was to be a creative woman. And I just didn't have the confidence to do that really. And I just didn't believe that I could and that I was creative enough. I think that was the main thing. And then I spent most of my life surrounded by creative people, supporting them in doing their work. But little by little, I ended up sort of drifting further and further away from creativity to the point where I ended up in property development, which was very crazy and random because I hated it with so much soul and passion that it was. But I mean, what I see now is that I had to get so far away from my dreams and desires in order to really come to terms to what do I actually want from my life, like what do I want to do with this one chance that we get to be here. And being in property development and doing everything that I hated and hating it so much, I was like, no, this can't be it. This cannot be how I live my life. It was a Friday night. I remember it so clearly. I was drinking wine and I was watching another documentary on Netflix because I do love documentaries. Mostly because I would be like, oh, yeah, the chosen few, can have documentaries made out of their lives. And it was that day that I decided this is not my life. Like, I don't choose this anymore. And so I made a choice. And one of the things that I'd always desired was to design clothes and textiles, which is the closest thing for me to be able to connect with people in a way that feels very powerful and very stylish, and in a way that really embodies what I'm trying to express in the world, which is joyful and powerful women can change it. And the vulva is the most powerful symbol and physical sort of attribute that we have, to almost venerate it, I would say, in a weird way, and immortalize it. in textiles and the clothes that we wear. And I think that having sort of fallen back in love with that part of myself was really the journey of reconnection to my own inner goddess. And the women that wear my stuff that kind of see, oh yeah, that's a vulva, because sometimes it's not very obvious and clear, but those that get it, I find that they already have a relationship that needs healing with that part of ourselves. So yeah, it's a constant for me to use that symbol and play around with it and use it in socks, in kaftans, in dresses, in t-shirts, and hoodies, and just like really play with that symbol.
And it is absolutely beautiful. I agree with everything that you've just said. It resonates so much, and there's so much I want to talk about with regards to this, actually. One thing you said that really struck a chord was that bit about falling back in love with that part of yourself. And personally, I think that is the game changer, that bit there. That is where everything changes, because, and I think actually it's got to do with everything that you've just talked about, because I know so many women, including myself, that have been through these or are going through this massive transition where they're realizing this is not the life I choose. This is not it. And, that's exactly what I went through personally as well. And I think it comes back to what you said about falling back in love with yourself. And at that point in my life, I didn't even realize that that's actually what I was starting to do or about to do. And this is why, I find your design so absolutely beautiful, as you well know. I've told you so many times. Everything you ever wear, I think I want to own myself. And it's just such a strong and powerful message, because it's something that I think we've been taught to massively shy away from, even be ashamed of, keep secret, even thinking about menstrual cycles, things like that. Women hide it. We don't, it's just this, it's like a stigma attached to it all. And yet it is the most essential part of us. It is the life-giving part of us that we should be so incredibly proud of, our own womanhood. And I think that sentence, falling back in love with ourselves, is just key. That is the absolute key message. And I think so many women that are going to be listening to this, and I know that are in my group already and that I've actually personally worked with, are going through this process. And it is a fucking hard process to go through. To fall back in love with yourself and to take ownership of your own life is hard. But the fact of what you were saying about doing it with joy, I think is key. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about living life through pleasure and joy. And, everything you do, you embody that. You embody that with everything you do. And, coming back actually to some of the other things you do as well, which is everything you offer is so connected. But having experienced some of your ceremonies that you do, and the journeys you take us on with it, that is just so incredibly powerful. And I'd love it, perhaps, if you could tell everybody a little bit about that and why it's so important as well.
Absolutely. It's interesting because for me, it's been a journey of rediscovery. And I think, and I was just writing yesterday a newsletter about this, and I think I've known since I was 12 that there is something very spiritual and otherworldly about what I'm here to do, in this world. And I've always almost like hidden it or shied away from it, or like, oh no, that's too out there, like that's not real stuff. When I'm talking about I don't know, ancestry or spirit animals, and the way that we can use other worlds that are not this 3D reality that we sit on every day, to support us in our journey of falling back in love with ourselves. And very sort of little by little, I found that this connection of designing textiles and drawing vulvas almost obsessively, because I do have like sketchbooks full of them, in very joyful colors and almost abstract forms, and then not so abstract forms, and just allowing myself to almost go back into my inner child and allow her to step back into that creative self, which I'm imagining, I don't recall exactly, but I think somewhere along the line, someone must have said something like, oh, you know, that's something you just do like on the side, or you're not very good at it, or something like that, because that feels really resonant for me when I kind of think about those memories of when or where someone said something that I integrated, and I thought, oh yeah, no, this is not for me, this is for some people who are super talented, and that's not me. And allowing myself to go back to that and play, I think really has opened up so much more of the things that I've been hiding about myself. And I think as women, we're so good at becoming smaller, you know, at being quiet, at like not being too loud, not being too much, not sort of upsetting the status quo and the balance, you know, like it's, I mean, it's very pervasive the way that's done in our society. And we do it, you know, we do it sometimes unintentionally with our own children sometimes, you know, where we kind of go like, oh, be quiet, you know, if they're like being noisy or whatever in a place where they're not supposed to be loud or something, you know, we do it very pervasively and like I say, unintentionally, I'm sure. But it's like this idea that we have to maintain and keep within the constraints and within the boundaries. It's keeping us small, you know, it's keeping us in a corner, and no one puts baby in a corner, as we well know. Because we, you know, we deserve to be on stage, you know, doing the jump, you know, and sometimes being supported and sometimes not. Sometimes it's something we do on our own initially, and I think that with ceremony and ritual, it gives you a sort of I find that it gives you like a almost like a cradle to walk through this journey, even when it feels really hard, and like, what's the point, and who gives a shit about what I have to say, you know. When we do it in a space of ceremony with other women, I mean, it's so powerful, because there's nothing more sacred than a circle of women, I find. And when it's a shared intention, if we're all going to go in, for example, when I do the shamanic drummings, if we are all going to go in with the intention of releasing what no longer serves us, it is amplified, you know, is the collective consciousness. And then it is amplified, and therefore it becomes so much clearer to access that part of ourselves that that most of the time is hidden away, and it has cobwebs, and it has other boxes, other people's shit on top of it, because you're meant to hold everyone's stuff before you can even look at your own. And so in ceremony, it's like we take away the cobwebs, we take away other people's boxes of shit, and you get to your own stuff, and it becomes priority, which is like, oh my God, I can do that? Like, I'm allowed, especially like those of us who are moms, you know, there's like another layer of like looking after everyone else and then yourself. And I think we get to do that in ceremony, and with rituals, you just get to make everything in your day a little bit more special and a little bit more, I want to use the word sacred, but I don't want, you know, people who are listening to think of it as a religious thing, because it really isn't. It's just about gratefulness, I think, more than anything else. Yeah.
And actually having experienced that with you, particularly when we were at the retreat, and just that little ritual of holding the drink, and smelling the drink, and taking that moment when I tasted it. I've never tasted like I tasted in that moment. Because as soon as you slow down and connect with that, it's amazing actually what you experience, which really makes me realize how much day to day we miss, when we're in that autopilot. And so much of what you just said, the becoming smaller, the dusting away the cobwebs and actually reconnecting with ourselves. The analogy that I use a lot with regards to creativity and the women that I work with is so much more than the thing you're doing. The thing you're doing is just kind of the result. It just kind of happens, because actually what it is about you connecting with yourself. And the way that I see it is that, what they say to you on the airports, in the airplane when you're about to fly, they're giving you the safety instructions, and one of the key instruction is to put your own gas mask on first, because how on earth can we support the people in our lives that we love so much if we are completely depleted ourselves? And everything that you're talking about, all of these, from just these small little rituals about and connecting with our creativity and just actually doing the things we enjoy doing, because I think so many people are very, very disconnected from that, from the pleasure in their life. And I think part of that is that actually they've just lost touch with actually what does bring them pleasure in the first place, which is so much of what you do is about that, is about reconnecting with yourself, so you can put your own gas mask on, so that you do actually know. And I have to say, actually, having been on this journey now for 8 years, I think, I've been doing this work for, and I can honestly say it's taken that long to kind of get to this point where I finally know what I want to do, but in the sense of I know that it's going to be constantly evolving as well. And I think a huge part of that has been particularly the last 2 years, and stepping into the feminine energy of, this flow. I've been so much in the masculine energy for most of my life, which is the do, and it's the support, it's the, everything you were saying about, the drive to get things done. And I think it's that actually that makes us smaller, because what we do is we put ourselves into a box, and they're all nicely labeled. I am a mother, I am a teacher, I am a wife, I am all these nicely little labeled boxes. And within that role, we then do the things that are expected of us. And not once, though, there's never a box that's like me. Me. And so much of particularly, I'd probably say in the last 3 months, we've talked about a lot about the me first, which, when you are so far away from that, it feels selfish. You feel like you're being completely selfish. And I find I often I was really hard on myself about that, actually. But by sticking to these kind of labels that we've given ourselves, we can become so disconnected. And I think a lot of the conversations I end up having with the women that I work with are about that. And I don't know whether you've noticed as well, and I'm going to come back actually to what you said about these designers, the other, almost, these people that are just special in some way, sophisticated maybe, and yes. I couldn't possibly be one of those. I have to say, pretty much every conversation that I have, and it doesn't matter in what setting I'm in, if it's with another woman, and if it's, we get onto the subject of kind of what I do and creativity, it's, oh yeah, I like to paint, but I'm rubbish at it, I'm no good at it. And we instantly, it's instant. It's as though we can't, we're so disconnected with ourselves. We can't even acknowledge where, our joy, basically. It's not even about the skill and talent side of it. That's the next step. But it's just the acknowledgement of, I really enjoy doing this thing. And that in itself is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels dangerous, I think, to admit that something so, and I'm using air quotes here, so menial and so whatever, like doodling, could bring you joy, and that then you could actually earn a living doing those kinds of things. Oh my God, like, no, that's not, oh no, not possible. And I think for me, I mean, it's funny, and I always go back to thinking about what was it that brought you joy as a child, because when we ask ourselves that question, and it's a question that when I work with women, I always kind of go there, like, tell me what brought you joy as a child, because first of all, it's beautiful to hear when we go back to that space. It's almost like we awaken that side of us that, unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, little by little falls asleep. And I think it's about waking up that side, and asking the right questions certainly helps. And when you ask yourself that question, and I really recommend that you do that, if you're listening to this, just take, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, like get in a space of landing in your body, light yourself a candle, make yourself a tea, just get in a space of being with yourself, and just ask yourself the question, what brought me joy as a child? And I think the things that come up are so revealing. I mean, it always is something that you can 100% do today, and you can 100% earn a living doing it. Because we think that, because it's like kid stuff, you can't do it now, and you can't earn a living, and all the other adult things that we get to do now. But for me, it was always doodling with felt tips. And it was very specific that it had to be felt tips, because I remember I had this set of felt tips that I loved, and it was like this Salvadorian brand. And I remember the ad as well, super clearly. And I would just spend so much time doodling. I can't even say it was drawing, because in my mind, drawing was something that only the talented people could do. And for me, it was mark making. It was very geometric shapes, and now, I mean, I continue to do that. And having started to do that again, for me, was like building that bridge back to my 6-7-year-old. And that has been the basis of my textiles. I mean, and it's crazy to think like, oh shit, I've known since I was 7 year old the thing that brings me so much joy, and I put it away for 20 something years, and now I'm back there again, and I'm actually, creating something and selling it and making money from it. And it just feels really crazy. Of course, it's developed into other things, but at the essence of that, it's just that. And, the other thing that really makes me smile is that I loved, and I even have a photo of myself doing like potions and being almost this shamanic being, wearing robes and things. I created this piece, when I think I must have been around 20. And I found this photo, and I was like, oh my God, like, I was doing that already, at that time. I'm 38 now. So it's crazy, because now I do these things, I hold ceremonies, and I mix things up, and I do this thing, and it's almost like conjuring this magic. And I'm like, I get to play the things that I've always enjoyed doing, like, that's crazy. Like, I'm wondering, what else is out there that women really love doing, or, as I say, asking or going back to your childhood, that you really love doing. And what does that say about where we are now? Like for me, I was in property development, fixing radiators and things like that. And it was just so like disconnected, I was so disconnected from myself. And that's where the hurt and the pain came for me. Because there was no alignment, no connection.
I can't even I can't even imagine you doing that kind of role. It's so far away from who you are and what you do. I just can't imagine you there fixing a radiator, for example.
Yeah, I know how to bleed a radiator if anyone needs to know this information.
Oh my God. Another list, another point to your list there of all the wonderful things you can do.
Yeah,
but yes,
definitely.
I think, I agree with you so much, because I think this is what I'm experiencing right now is looking back, and some of the things that I started doing probably in the recent year, I've suddenly had this flashback of my much younger self doing that thing and thoroughly loving it. And somewhere in between, I lost it. As in, I didn't just I didn't just lose it as in I let me start that again. I lost touch with it, because not only was it not in my mind at all, I had completely forgotten that that was a part of me in the first place. It's as though it was, I just pushed it so far back. And I think what it was, it's almost, I feel like I was on a bit of a treadmill of doing all the shoulds, all the things that we should do. I should buy a house, I should get married, I should have children, I should be in a sensible job which is going to provide me with an income and a pension, all of those shoulds, all of those things that make logical sense. And what I've realized, I think particularly in this last year, I have done every illogical thing I could do. My whole life has flipped upside down. And yet I'm still here. I'm still earning. I have a home, a space of my own, running a shop, running a business, have my beautiful children, and they are happier than ever. And it just has proven to me, there's been so much evidence now that actually that logical path, that all those shoulds that we should apparently, according to culture, society, should be doing, isn't necessarily the right path. I mean, don't get me wrong, it might be so suited to some people, but
yeah,
that's if it comes back to their personal joy. And yeah. I think that's the difference is I did a lot of things, number one, because I was too frightened to do it another way. And I remember that fear, because actually when I qualified as a teacher, there was a job in Thailand that I could have taken, and I was too scared. And there was also an opportunity to travel the world when I was younger, and I was too scared. And I remember actually having that thought, no, I'm too scared to do that. I can't do that.
Wow.
And so I didn't. And I went straight into a career, 15-year career.
Wow.
And
now you want to travel the world.
Well, this is it. I'm coming back to the person that I was all those years ago before, this I don't even know what it is. This thing kind of clicked in place of, I need to do this. I need to be secure in my life. And actually at that age, that's not what you need. That's the age where actually, exploring your joy is kind of essential, because what's happening now is I'm flipping it. I'm going to be 40 next year, and now I'm like, right, I want to travel, I want to go play, I want to do all the things that bring me joy. And wouldn't it be lovely? Wouldn't it have been amazing if at that point in my life I'd started that then? Because I would have learned the value of that, I think, much younger. And it's taken me, and I know that everything I've experienced in my life I've needed, because it's got me to this point right now. But it's taken me that long to complete this circle. It's a 15-year cycle that I've been on. And I'm now coming back to myself, and it has been, and for me personally, I've told this story separately, but about when I had that mental breakdown, and actually I had no choice but to come back to the thing I love, because the only thing that got me out of that was drawing and painting. I literally couldn't speak, I couldn't breathe, couldn't stop crying, and the only thing that got me through that period in my life was my joy. And I didn't even realize it at the time. And that is what has spurred everything. All of the growth in the last 2-3 years has been from that point, so it's essential. I mean,
That's
I think
amazing.
kind of coming back, and playing with your creativity. And I think a lot of people see, when you say the word creative or creativity, people instantly think of art, and actually it's not just art. It's so much more than that. Being creative, you could be in a corporate role somewhere and you could still be a highly creative person, because it's to do with the way you think. And I think you're right about, when you connect back to your inner child, whether that's, from a very young age, it could even be older, kind of in teenager, couldn't it?
Yeah.
When you connect back to that, you're connecting back with that original kind of creativity that we were born with, and when you was talking, I was thinking about my children, and my middle boy in particular, since he could speak, he used to call it that he wanted to be a guerrilla farmer, which he then learned was a zookeeper, which has now developed into a conservationist. He's going to be 8 this year, and he is so set on this path. He's known right from the start exactly what he wanted to do. And everything you was just saying, I really resonate with, because I think we know when we're younger, and then we learn a whole load of stuff.
Oh yes.
And then what we do is we realize, we get to that point of going, I don't choose this anymore. And then we have to unlearn all of that stuff.
Basically, that's the job at this point, is like unlearning all the shit that we kind of learned. I would say probably somewhere in your teens and your late, like early 20s, and then like undo all of that. And I'm sure obviously there is some childhood stuff that comes in as well, but it's basically unlearning. I think you're right. That's yeah.
I agree. And I think we learned all of those things to kind of keep us safe, because we were taught that that's what would keep us safe. And I think, the one thing that the pandemic really showed us is the safest place we can be is with ourselves, with the thing we love. And actually, if I'm honest, in our own business, because, look what's happened to so many people over the course of all of this with regards to jobs. And actually, if you're following your passion, you're following your love, you're in the safest place you can possibly be, right there. And when it coming back to this unlearning, I think a huge part of that is about the embodiment of who we want to be. And I know you are amazing at that. It's a huge part of what you do, and in fact you're soon to be opening the Mayan School of Embodiment, aren't you? So I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about that, Caro.
So embodiment is one of these elusive terms that I think we hear a lot of nowadays in Instagram, or just people kind of throw it and stuff, and sometimes it's about what is embodiment. And I think for me the easiest kind of descriptor for it is essentially you gotta walk your talk, essentially. For example, in my case, if I'm someone that really talks about the importance of celebrating ourselves, celebrating our vulva, celebrating the power that comes with that, that's great to talk about it. So what am I doing to walk that talk? What is it that I'm actually doing on my day to day? Not on Instagram, not on stories, not on my mailing list, not on my website, but like, when no one's watching. I think that's kind of like the I would say the golden sort of coin of that. It's like, when no one's watching, what are you doing? Are you continuing to honor that talk? Or are you not doing that at all, and are you berating yourself or talking at yourself in in a negative way that actually erodes your self-trust and your confidence? Or are you playing your favorite music and dancing in the morning before your day begins because you know that that bit gets you in the right headspace, but also gets you in your body, and it awakens that kundalini energy which sits in our womb space, you know, like, so that's the question. Like for me, you know, that is something, you know, a practice that I've developed over time because I've read more about it, I've discovered it, but also I've always loved to move my body. And I know that when I'm moving my body, and I'm careful at not using the word dance here because then people think like, oh, but I can't dance. And that's not the point at all. You know, the point is moving our bodies. It doesn't matter how it looks because that's not what our bodies care about. Our bodies just care about feeling alive and feeling loved, you know, and hugging yourself in the morning. And, you know, yeah, sometimes someone will walk, you know, if you have kids or a partner, you know, they might come with like, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, I'm hugging myself, you know, because it's very nice to hug yourself. Like, you know, if you're listening to this, like literally, like put your arms around you and just feel the weight of your body in your arms. It's very, I do find it's a very cradling sort of position. And as an embodiment coach, some of the practices that we learn are actually things that children do a lot, you know, humming, you know how children are so free with their bodies, right? They're like in the middle of the road and all of a sudden they start like moving it in a certain way, or they start babbling out loud or singing to themselves. You know, all these things are very soothing to our nervous system. And we just slowly start forgetting about them because we're told that that's weird, you know, that humming to yourself in the middle of the road, it sounds like you're crazy, and like, you know, all these things. And so, okay, so we're like in our brain, we go, okay, so don't hum out on the streets where everyone can see. That is crazy. Delete, you know, and we start like sort of taking away all these very natural ways of embodying ourselves. You know, embodying is being in your body, you know, understanding that the connection between your brain and your body is as important as each other. Not that one is better than the other, is they're equally important. And the Mayan School of Embodiment is about that reconnection and that relearning, you know, that our bodies hold the wisdom much more before than our brain does.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree. And yeah, so much of that, you're so right. We get we get taught, yeah, what looks crazy and what doesn't. And actually, I'm going to be doing a podcast episode actually about the importance of environment and creating a safe environment for yourself, because I think that's a huge part of it. And I know that's been a huge part of my journey as well. And it isn't until I have experienced it myself, creating that sense of safety for yourself will allow you to do all of this. And I think it's vital. You know, there's lots of elements, lots of factors that come into this process of unlearning and rewiring ourselves, basically. And creating that safety for yourself, I think is absolutely essential. And one of the ways that I've managed to do that is through the environment. Because then you can hum and sing and rock and scream. I mean, this is one of the things actually that I know we've talked about before is, you know, that we lose our voice somewhere along the lines, and you can feel that block in your throat, you know, when you want to say something or you want to do something, or you just have an emotion that you literally can't contain, and yet we get taught, in fact, to contain it. And it's something that I'm trying to do with my children right now is say to them, cry, scream, shout, that's fine, as long as it's, you know, there's a difference between projecting it at somebody and actually just allowing ourselves to feel it. And this is what I'm, I feel that it's a big part of that embodiment process is about honoring our emotions. Our emotions are that energy in motion, and therefore we need to honor it when we feel it in our body, and whatever that comes out as, allow it to come out, whether that is that kind of happy dance in the kitchen,
Yes.
whether it is that just screaming into a pillow when we are so, we have that, perhaps that anger or something in us. It's allowing it. And this is what I've realized in the last few years is this is a big part of what that feminine energy is about. It's about surrendering and allowing things to flow, whatever they may be, because I think when we have trust in ourselves, when we know that we're honoring ourselves, when we know we're on that path that is right for us, even if we have no idea where that's leading, and trust me, most of the time I have no idea where that's leading, but when we have that trust in ourselves, that's what we're doing. We're honoring ourselves. We're within that feminine energy. We're allowing life to flow, and we get to nurture that through these embodiment practices, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you mentioned something there really like poignant, which is like allowing yourself to feel, right? Like to really feel the things that come up. And I think parenting in particular is such a kind of situation where things will come up that you haven't dealt with and your own sort of if you do shadow work, or if you're kind of aware of the things that need some more attention within you. Having kids, it's like, fuck, it's gonna come up, they're gonna like put a mirror up at you and say, right, here's the thing that you haven't dealt with, here's the thing that you haven't dealt with. And I think that the moment we begin to cultivate a practice of being in our body, there is like a millisecond before you react, where you kind of go, oh yeah, I can feel the anger rising through my leg, going up to my head, and my cheeks are getting red because I'm about to scream. I mean, this all happens in such a small section, but it really is powerful just to notice those things coming up, because then you're able to kind of, before you scream, kind of like take a breather and go, I'm just gonna go somewhere else right now because this is too much, and I mean, and this is so subtle, and I say this, I have two kids, one is 14 and the other one is 6, and the 14-year-old, I say to her, you got me very raw. You got the raw version of me, whereas the younger one has a more developed, a little bit more mature, I would say, version of myself. So with the oldest one, I'm almost like, I'm sorry for the times that I kind of screamed at you for no apparent reason, like. And so, and she remembers a few moments where, I mean, I'm not a huge screamer, but like, I remember raising my voice to a point where it did, it wasn't okay. And she remembers, and I do ask for her to kind of, I'm sorry that happened, because I was just in my head, really. Like, I just had no connection to anywhere. It's just like head, and this is why rebuilding that relationship with our vulvas is so powerful, because there's so much emotion and feeling and pain as well attached to that part of ourselves. And I know for some people it's even hard to speak about it. That's why I love what you're doing here, because it's like, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because unless we do that, the healing and the reconnection and the falling back in love won't happen. And what I want to say is, for those of us that have been through pain when it comes to our vulvas and our womb space, and all the trauma that we as women go through with that there is hope of feeling empowered by that. And I get goosebumps because I'm testament to that. And then we also get to pass this knowledge and these lessons to our younger generation of girls, which unfortunately, as we know, statistically, it's likely that they will suffer something around their femalehood as well. And it doesn't have to be painful always. It can be joyful.
Yes,
we can do both.
I agree. Yeah, holding both. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's it, talking, particularly with what you do and talking about the vulva and the womb space, that is our root, isn't it? That is our connection. It's what gives life. It's the root of a lot of our physical pleasure, and it's something that people shy away from. We certainly don't really talk about it, and I think it's about time that we start, and we really start connecting with that. And I think going back to the conversation with children and the mirror, the reflection, I see that particularly in my daughter, who is the oldest and who had the raw me. And I'm getting the raw me back right now. So actually I'm going through this process with her, and I think there's so much we can learn from children, and it's about being aware. I think, all of this is about being aware. It's about being aware of actually what's happening, and being aware of ourselves, and like you've said, reconnecting with ourselves, and particularly our younger selves, and our passion and our joy and our body. Our body is something, I was thinking about when you were saying about hugging ourselves, and I realized we don't touch ourselves generally. We kind of shy away from it. There's a stigma about that, and yet I think that is a massive part of growing up. It should be, it's about how can we be with somebody else if we don't like, if we don't know what we like ourselves, and
absolutely,
actually connecting with our body. And when I say that, a lot of people instantly think, oh, it's sexual, and it's not sexual straight away. It's just about knowing what we like, and actually honoring our own skin, our own body, and yes, that will teach us about our sexual pleasure, and that's essential. That's not something to be shied away from, because actually this podcast is called The Big O because there is such a power within an orgasm. And I'm not even just talking about, that moment when you are with somebody else, or with, alone with your own body. I'm talking about there was another amazing woman that I heard speaking once, and she said, I don't do anything unless it turns me on. And when we are connected to our root, we're connected with our vulva, we're connected with our womb space. This is actually what's triggered a huge part of the change in my life, because actually I got to a point where I was really extremely connected, as you well know, to my body. And, from that conversation with you, that Kundalini energy was clearly awakened. And actually it was through that I started doing the things that I was turned on by, things that actually brought me joy and pleasure, and it's led to so many changes, that may have been like just actually having my hands in the paint, doing a painting. It could have been, choosing a direction to go with the business, but it's the things that I felt, it's the things you can actually feel in your body that you feel fully excited about. I think that's what it is. It's that feeling that's right inside your body, that feeling of excitement, that feeling of pleasure. And actually, if you think about it, that is what an orgasm is. It's where you feel it through your body.
Yes.
And it's amazing.
And you curl your toes.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of such a beautiful thing, because it's like it just takes over essentially. And I think you're right in going like, okay, what shall I do with my life? Like, because it's a big question, what do you want? Like, it's such a big question. And certainly going with the motto of do what turns you on sort of narrows it down, because not everything turns you on, but at least you can sort of use that as a compass, and people will go like, how do I know what turns me on? I mean, it is literally like you can feel it in your womb space. I mean, I can feel it in my vulva when I do stuff or come up with a design or deliver something or have a conversation with one of my beautiful women. You know, it's like it really is so embodied, for lack of a better word. What happens inside you when you have conversations that are meaningful, when you do something that is meaningful to you, you know, because what's meaningful to you might not be to the next person, and that's totally fine. But it's a good compass, I would say. You know, your vulva is a magic space, you know, and awakening that through, and I one of the easiest ways for me, and that I definitely teach, is through dance, you know, through moving your magic cauldron with music that feels delicious. And sometimes it's not even like sensual or anything. Sometimes it could be totally like, I don't know, like rock, you know, like, because we can navigate all these frequencies, and it's just so magical. So after this, everyone go and play your song that you love and start moving your hips in circles, and then move the other way around, and then go down, and then go up, and then lift your arms, put your hair down, and really like get into that frequency, because it is very powerful.
It is so powerful. And actually, when you're in it and when you can feel it, you know, the way you feel about yourself, and you suddenly, I think for me, when I'm dancing like that and I really am feeling it and I'm in the music, it's like that's the point where I realize I am a woman and I am a sexual being, and you get to feel it and own it in your own body. And that is so powerful, because I think it changes, you know, if you spent you know, whether it's the morning, the evening, whatever, you know, you're there for that moment doing that, there's something different about the way you walk after, because you suddenly have, you know, I think it's a way of awakening a confidence within you. It's like a primal confidence, you
Yes,
know.
yes. And I've seen it in you as well. I mean, I remember when you were in the midst of like the height of every kind of like fucking thing that you've been through over
Every
the
shit
past.
thing.
Yeah, you were like at the top of that. And I remember we did a dance thing, and all of a sudden you just transformed into this mythical goddess of fire and passion, and I was just like, oh my goodness, what is going on, you know? And in that moment, it was just like all the shit that was around, it kind of just paused, and you were just in your world and in yourself and in your being. And I think, of course, once that stopped, yeah, the shit that was paused now became, you know, played again and became alive again, because it's not that it goes away and like pretending it's not there, because it is there. But to access those moments of hope, of yourself, you know, even when it's really hard, because life, you know, life is life and it will get hard. To know that you have access to that, even for a few minutes, I think it's beautiful to remember that,
I
even
agree.
in the trickiest times. Yeah.
It ignites something in you, I think. And I think what it comes down to, actually, I remember that moment, actually,
Mm.
because I remember you saying about it then. And I think what it does is it just reminds you of your strength, and it brings you
Yeah.
back to self, because like you were saying before, you know, your raw self, um when the kids were younger, you know, that's with so much in our heads. And by doing that, we come back into our body and we remind ourselves of who the fuck we are. And at that point, that ignites our strength. And it's like, yes, all this shit is here. Yes, it is completely fucking overwhelming. But do you know
Mm.
what? I can do it. I have done it. I will continue doing it. And you get to I think it's owning your own power, isn't it? And I think it's realizing your own power. And I think, this is a big slogan that's actually all over my website, is that it's an awakening. It's more, when I run a photo shoot with someone, it's more than a photo shoot. It's more than a piece of art. It's more than a dance in the kitchen. It's so much more than that. It's a fucking awakening. It's an awakening to ourselves and to our own power, to our own strength, to our femininity, to all of that, and the power that we have within. And that is game changing. That is life changing. And I can attest to that, because my life has literally changed. And it has been through these practices, which are just absolutely essential. Oh, Caro, it's been so good talking to you. Is there any final message that you would like to give to anyone to take away with them today?
I think that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to listen to this whole podcast again, because there's so much beautiful wisdom that has been has come through. Sometimes it's just, you don't know where it comes from, it just comes. And I'm really grateful that you're doing this, because it's so important. It really, really is. And I would just say to women out there, do what turns you on, and dance.
Move those hips.
Those hips.
In fact, I would love that.
Move your magic cauldron, because it's yours to move. And once you start moving, it's like you conjure up the energy and the magic, and then your life is there for the making. So go and make it joyful and powerful.
Oh, amazing, Caro. I can just envision that right now. It's just all these women switching this off, putting the music on and moving their hips.
Yes, go for it. Yes, if you need a playlist, I do have a curated playlist for this kind of work on Spotify. So it's called the Big Bush Energy playlist. So you can go and listen to that.
Perfect. And actually, Caro, that's where people can find you, isn't it?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at Caro Gomez _Joy Witch. And that's really where I do all my things, and you'll find my clothes, you'll find my ceremonies, rituals, programs, all of it goes in there. And very soon, depending on when this podcast goes out, the Mayan School of Embodiment.com. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for today, Caro. Honestly, it's been wonderful talking to you. There's almost always so much wisdom that comes from you, and I just love our conversations. So thank you so much for being part of this today.
Oh, thank you, Emma. Sending you lots of love.